Well, I think before there was sound, there was silence. And I think that's the essence of life. Life really is silent. And to understand yourself, I think you have to follow that aspect of life that's with you all the time, and that's your breath. Because if you stop breathing, then you die. Breath is a constant reminder of your connection to life. And I think what Janine was trying to say, or saying actually, and I think she did it very, very well, is that you can use your breath to get to a deeper space. Sorry about that. Sound can be interrupting, definitely, of silence. Yes, it's important for all of us to get to know ourselves, because unless we know ourselves and we can transform ourselves, then what we're talking about will never happen. Because there will be no change unless you are the change. And the only way to change yourself is, first of all, to know yourself. And the way to know yourself is to look into yourself. And you can only look into yourself in that silent moment. So silence is the and the silence comes before sound. And as a creative person, you know that you go into your silent space to get that creative message. I think you mentioned it before, that when you start to write, there are 1,000 entities there with you. That's coming out of the silence of your mind and your space. And this is where I think you get to the necessity of love, because it's a feeling. It's not a word. And it's not just the English language, it's all words. All words are just descriptions. And that's why the Egyptians, they had a different sacred language, which was the hieroglyphics, which was a symbol. If you saw a symbol of a cow, you knew exactly what it meant. But if you saw C-O-W doesn't mean anything. But if you draw a cow, you know what that means. So language takes us out of ourselves. And it's important for us not to get caught up with language. We live in a culture that's very, very linguistic. I mean, there are thousands of books out there about getting to know yourself, or finding peace and tranquility and all of this kind of stuff. And I guarantee you 99% of them have never been in that space that they're describing. They're talking about it, but somebody and they write about it over and over and over again. And it's the same thing with college and in education. You learn things that somebody else describes. And then the textbook changes every 5 years. And that passes for knowledge, but it's really information. So for true knowledge, you need to go into yourself. And when I'm advocating here again, that's what Janine said in terms of, which is meditation, to get into yourself. Because the problem with us as an African people, we have been disconnected from ourselves. We are a spiritual people. If you look at it, everywhere there are black people. I think in Jamaica, there are more churches than bars, and probably more churches per square mile than anywhere else in the world. I think it's the same thing in the southern United States, and so on and so forth. So in the diaspora, in Africa, we are a spiritual people. But we've been disconnected from our spiritual source. And we have been given, somebody mentioned religion, we've been given a religion that denies our connection even to the religion and to God and to Christ. And this is where we're in a quandary of who we are. And we have to answer that question, who am I? Because that's the most fundamental question for all humanity. If you don't answer that question before you die, then you're going to have to come around again. Another life to get the answer. But you must answer the question, who am I? And you can only do it in that silent space. When you find out, and when you get that connection, just as Janine said, you will find out that the I is not just I. It's not an ego, but the I is I and I. It's the little I with the big I, like the drop of water to the ocean. It's the unity with God. It's a non-dual reality that is our source. And this is the job that we have to do to reconnect with our roots, our true spiritual roots. And that's the only way we can, how should I say, transform the materialistic power that is out there. Because let's face it, we're not going to have, you know, bigger bombs. We're not going to have more atomic bombs. We're not going to have more hydrogen bombs. But if we access our spiritual power, and in that way, uniting, that's the only way we can unite. Because when you're talking about what you talked about community and people singing to each other, that was the interconnection at the spiritual level. It wasn't just a physical thing. It wasn't just a voice. It was my presence relating to your presence. And this is where we have to be, because we have been taught to hate ourselves. And this is what manifests in so much of what we do, whether it's abuse at home, or not wanting to organize with somebody else, and being egotistical and not sharing information and so on and so forth. These are all indices of self-hate and not knowing who we are. So we need to get back to our spiritual core, but we need to understand that the spiritual core is not necessarily in terms of the religions that we are inheriting, shall we say, from the Western world and elsewhere. They're the true spirituality of our ancestors who understood it. And if you go back to Kemet and you know all about Alsar, Alset and Heru, etc., and Ra, and Ptah, and Amun, this is where we came from, and this is the reality, the absolute reality of the universe, which our ancestors understood 10,000 years before the Western world understood it. So that's the kind of job that we have to do in terms of, Marcus Garvey said, you know, liberate your mind from mental slavery. Marcus Garvey said that, you know, people without knowledge of their origins, history and culture is like a tree without roots. We need to know our history. We need to know the wisdom and the wisdom literature that we've had for thousands and thousands of years that has been distorted and destroyed and so on. We have work to do, but we can do it, and we need to transform ourselves.